Hey everyone, David C. Anderson here, coming at you from the Knife Center, and welcome to Knife AQ episode 122, the knife series, where I answer all your questions, whether they're sharp or dull. This week, we got a few good ones. Amongst them, we asked the question, where have all the big knives gone? All right, welcome everyone. If you're new to this series, what we do is we pull out questions from the comment section below these videos and find those good ones to answer. So if you have a question, you want a chance to have it answered perhaps in a future episode, perhaps you'll be inclined to leave it in the comment section below this video. First question today comes from Joseph Garcia. And first of all, Mr. Joseph Garcia, I will applaud you on your respectful tone in this particular comment, because you hit on a point that I've seen many, maybe not many, but a number of comments along this line, and a lot of them are a little more derogatory, might be the wrong word, but I appreciate your tone in this. Here we go. Why have most knives seem to have shrunk? Most pocket knives these days seem to be in the 2.5 to 3.5 inch range. Is it a legal issue? I love some smaller knives, but size does matter, and when needed, ... Yeah, where I've seen this before, like I said, some people will make this comment and say, oh, these smaller knives are useless, you gotta have this, and why, what's with this trend towards smaller knives? And I would actually argue that the bigger knife stuff that folks are talking about here, I think that's more actually the trend than smaller knives. Let me hold up a couple examples here to kind of illustrate what I'm talking about. The CJRB Pyrite, or this is the Pyrite Alt technically, with its new blade shape. It's about a 3-inch blade, just over 3 inches in this case. And I don't know about you, but this is a very convenient, very handy size, both in use and when stored in one's pocket. It's very controllable, very nimble, and just very useful for just general cutting purposes. Is this what I would reach for if I knew I would need something in a self-defense scenario, or even if I wanted to prepare myself for said eventuality or said circumstance? No. But I think most people, and this is a conjecture on my part, most people who carry pocket knives aren't looking at that as their primary reason for carrying a pocket knife either. And you know what? That's okay. I think so. If you just want a little, a handy utility knife, 3 inches is a great size. And historically speaking, folders have often been in this smaller range. Check out this Case Mini Trapper right here. Actually, let's take a minute and check it out. Look at that candy apple green bone. I love that color. This is the color that we saw this at SHOT Show earlier this year and kind of stopped me in my tracks. I had to go pull one of those for the video we did in that interview. It's just such a sweet color. And while bigger knives have certainly existed for a long time, bigger folders, I should say, something like this is more likely what your grandpa carried, or my grandpa would have carried, or even my dad would have carried, actually, for that matter, because it's useful. And I certainly wouldn't choose a slip joint for self-defense, certainly. But yeah, I'd say the trend towards bigger knives, that's the trend more than the trend towards smaller knives. Because, while there are certain instances where a 3-inch blade length limit might come into effect, I know, here we're about an hour south of Washington, D.C. They have said limit there. Most places, it's the reason you see knives this size is they're just more useful. Let's talk about the big knife trend, though. I think, in my mind anyway, I kind of equate it with the 1980s, kind of the big survival knife trend, think like the Rambo movies, that sort of thing. And the survival knife craze of the 80s certainly had its influence, not just on the fixed blade side of the industry, but folders too. I mean, certainly knives, or companies like Cold Steel and Zero Tolerance built their reputation on bigger knives, oftentimes with the bigger knife genre. You also, start to hear terms like overbuilt, ultra tough, that sort of thing. Knives like this will certainly always have their place. And we certainly see new releases from both of these companies. Well, less so ZT right now, but certainly from Cold Steel and other companies to this day, leaning into that bigger knife genre. Actually, I have one right here I almost showed, but the Cold Steel Engage. This is a new limited edition with marbled carbon fiber and XHP steel. Very, very cool. not quite as big and chunky as this SR1 Lite, but still a big knife. It's 3.5-inch blade, but check out, these two cold steels are actually a real perfect example. Less so the ZT. It's more of a commitment to carry this because it's something bigger. It's overkill for most everyday scenarios that, again, generalizing here, but that most people encounter. And it takes up a lot of room in one's pocket. It's more of a commitment to carry, and many people might not feel that they need so much capability to open packages. The ZT, actually, this is the, I always forget the number, the 452 CF, Dmitry Sinkovich design. Cool thing about this one, even though you got a 4-inch blade, it actually is quite easy to carry. They went with a slightly narrower profile on this particular one. It's a very cool knife. So let me see, let me check my notes, make sure I made all the points I wanted to make. Here's one of them, here's another, sorry, bad joke. Yeah, I'd say it's the 3-inch, if we're seeing a trend towards more, 2.5, 3-inch, a little bit bigger than that, blades. If we're seeing a trend towards that now, I'd say it's more of a market correction than a new fad or a new trend. It's easier to use for most things. That's why you see those sizes. But what about our comments section? Let me know your kind of preferred size. What kind of sized pocket knife do you generally gravitate to? It'll be unofficial scientific data in the comments section. All right, next question comes from iPsychonaut. Hey DCA, what are the flattest tactical knives that fit in a flat pouch or briefcase? Sure, well my mind immediately went to Benchmade. I happen to own one of these right here, the M4 Bailout. And actually you mentioned suitcase, so I'll show, this is an opportune time for this question to have come up. We've also got the new SHOT Show 2023 limited edition of the Bailout in orange aluminum with blue accents and 3V steel with an uncoated blade. Let's say you're putting this in a briefcase and you want it to maybe look a little less tactical. This colorway certainly is a bit more whimsical feeling, or you could go with the the more tactical green and gray version right here. $270 for this, about $290 I think for the orange one. But what's cool about this, the orange one might actually show the dimension a little bit better on camera, so I'll hold this one up. It's aluminum, so it's solid billets of aluminum milled to shape, so it's actually quite robust feeling despite its thin nature. There's a bit of contour to the blade. You've got tough steel, so you can get away with a thinner blade than, for instance, that SR1 Lite right there. Look at the disparity right there. You could almost stack like 2.5 of these Bailout blades inside of the SR1. But you still get the slicing benefits of a thinner blade, but the greater toughness of something like 3V or M4, both of them very tough steels here. And folded up, very nice package, easy to carry in the pocket and easy to fit into a sleeve in a briefcase, a pouch. I don't know if you're, some of the pouches I use for kind of gear kits come with little, elasticated straps, that sort of thing. This would fit into even narrower straps right there, which is quite nice. Another kind of tactical series of knives that is famous for being very thin, we'll go back to cold steel again, with their Code 4 series. And in terms of value, I think this offers a lot more value than these Benchmades for sure. The price is certainly way less, about $107 for this knife, and you've still got powder metal steel S35 VN and aluminum handles. I mean, value quotient there, there's no argument for sure. You've got a triad lock, which is nice and strong. One of those things that work well on overbuilt folders. 3.5-inch blade, a little bit longer than the Bailout. Tanto available, as well as a spear point and a clip point. Feels really good in the hand despite being quite thin. Two things to points of comparison with it and the Bailout. Ultimate thickness at its widest point, I think the Bailout is actually just a skosh thicker. I don't want to put my micrometers on it because I don't want to mar the finish on either of these. But the way it tapers down from its high point on the Bailout makes it feel not as thick as its widest point would suggest if you're just looking at a spec sheet. It truly is nice and slim. The Code 4, however, is slimmer, but folded, it is quite wider. So depending on how you're storing it in your suitcase or pouch. If it needs to fit inside a strap, that this might be a little too wide of an option, but if it'll fit, it's certainly an excellent option. All right, next question comes from Tanner Shumway. So I'm sort of new to knife collecting, welcome, but I've noticed on a few knives I've purchased, there is a slight discolored spot. I've wiped them down with a cloth to make sure it's not just oil. It does not go away when I do this. I have one on the blade edge and two on the side of the blade. It's like a light brown color. I'm wondering if it's a bad heat treat, maybe a stain from the oil, or maybe a burn mark from grinding in the factory. Well, it's hard to tell without actual photos or actually being able to inspect the knife in question, but there's a few things it could be. One, it could be a bit of patina forming on the side of the blade, and that can happen even if it is a stainless steel. I've seen it happen. Stainless means, think about the word, break it down. It stains less. It doesn't mean it's stain proof, although there are a few that are virtually stain proof. But even a stainless steel can develop patina an easy way if just cleaning it doesn't take it off. I'm a big fan on my personal knives of Barkeeper's Friend. You make a little slurry with that powder and it'll take especially light patinas off, no problem. That's probably what's on the side of your blades. As for the marks on the edge, that could get a little more tricky. Try something like the Barkeeper's Friend, and if that removes it, then it was patina, nothing to worry about. If it doesn't, there's a possibility it could have gotten kind of overcooked at the factory, so to speak. When they're, in industrial applications, when you're going in and sharpening the final edge, most factories, there's a chance that the edge could get too hot during the sharpening process, which would affect the temper, which could mean you could have a brittle spot there, a spot that's not going to hold an edge like you might want it to. If that's the case, if the knife's unused, honestly, best thing to do in that case, send it back in for an exchange, and then we can handle the defecting out process with the company. You could give the company a chance if you want to go through warranty process. But if you can't get the mark off of the edge by other means, if it truly is there, me as a customer, I would reach out for an exchange personally. All right, now we come to the lightning round for today. First question is from Anthony. This is in response to a question we had a week or two ago about what was it? Behind the edge thickness of the blades. I said it would be amazing if behind the edge thickness was a spec, but I totally understand why it's a difficult quantity to nail down for each knife. But a blade to handle ratio or sharpened edge to handle ratio spec is as simple as dividing one spec by another and wouldn't be difficult to add. What are your thoughts? Well, this is a spec that I can understand the compulsion. There's the desire that can exist to want to get as much blade as possible into a handle. And however, I think it's a bit of a misleading spec. And I think it was kind of really, expressing it as a ratio is certainly very easy. You could do it yourself, quite honestly. But I'll call him out by name. Everyday Commentary, fantastic website. The writing that he does there on his reviews, truly excellent. I enjoy reading them. Even now, I was reading one like yesterday. And he uses that as a scoring element. And I've never kind of warmed up to that. And I'll tell you why. There's times where, the spec on paper doesn't really tell you the full story of a knife. It's kind of it feels meaningless to me anyway when I see it written down. And it seems kind of unfair for me to score a knife based on that, because something like the Spyderco Delica is a fantastic knife that happens to score very poorly on a blade or especially sharpened edge to handle ratio. But that doesn't make it a worse knife at all. What do you need to know for me when I'm looking at a knife? How big's the handle, so I know if it'll fit my hand? How long is the blade? That's, I think, more important for more people. I'm generalizing. I'm doing a lot of generalizing today here. The Delica is a fantastic knife. In fact, check out the new Pyrite Alt here. The usable handle to usable edge is actually very similar. Maybe a little more usable edge, but not too dissimilar actually from the classic Delica. But hey, just to make it clear, do not take this as a diss on the Everyday Commentary website. Just fantastic stuff. Go check them out. All right, next question is from Pavel Kruglov. Do you know about any kitchen knives with a convex grind? Certainly I do. There's a few you can check out. Check out the Global Knife brand. They've got a whole range of models. The edges themselves, or the entire blade grind itself is not fully convex. You do have a flat grind, but the edge is very nicely convex. You can see it here. You can see kind of that sharpened transition where they transition to the convexedness, and they are very, very nicely done. You can experience that kind of convex geometry on a kitchen knife, which is quite nice, I gotta say. My favorite Big Chris Cook's knife has a convex geometry similar to that, where it's at the edge. If you're looking for something with a full convex, Kniven. Famously known for their fixed blades with convex geometry, and you can find it on most of their kitchen knives as well, such as this CMT Delta 6-inch. This is more of a premium one. This is like 370 bucks. 145 for the 6-inch chef from the Global right here. So that'd certainly be more attainable. Well, now we come to our final question of the day, which is, of course, our most serious question of the day. Most serious question from FC is, what is the meaning of knife? Well, this is going to be a bit of an obscure answer, so stick with me. We must travel to a faraway place to find the answer. And my deep thoughts are telling me to go to Germany. Because check out any of Boker's 42 variants of some of their popular knives. If you know what I'm talking about, then you know what I'm talking about. If not, sorry. I hope you know where your towel is. Well, that's all we have for today, folks. Let me know your thoughts on the answers. If you have some other suggestions, would love to hear them. Let me know your preferred blade lengths, like we mentioned earlier. Let me know what you think of the handle ratio spec. I'm genuinely curious to see what you folks think of it, how much importance you folks place on it. In the meantime, if you want to get your hands on any of these knives, check out the links in the description. That'll take you to KnifeCenter.com. And of course, always remember we've got our Knife Rewards program, which means if you purchase one of these knives today, you get to earn some free money to spend on a future one. I'm David C. Anderson from the Knife Center. That's Thomas behind the camera. We're signing off. See you next time.
I didn't say anything.
Did you say anything? You didn't say anything in this whole video.
Nothing.
He's still there though. It's cool. Bye.